So this is a review for Holy Smoke, released in 1938. It's the 213th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. There are a few ways you can watch this short. It's on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 5 DVD set, on the Looney Tunes Platinum Collection Volume 3 Blu-ray set, and also on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set. So you've got a few choices there. It's not on YouTube as it is under copyright, otherwise the video will just get deleted. But in case you haven't seen this one, you've got Porky, who is a child again in this one. He's given a nickel to give to the collection plate at church. But along the way, he encounters a bully dog character thing smoking a cigar, where he eventually makes a bet to prove that he's not a wimp by giving the nickel for the cigar. The cigar proves too strong for Porky, and he ends up in a cigar shop where the various smoke products come alive, singing to him that he should not smoke. And that last point is definitely an interest one, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So before I go through the trivia for this short, my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, he's going to be joining me on this review, as there is a heavy music focus here, and not even just the fact that they sing a song about how Porky shouldn't smoke at the end, but there's definitely some interesting musical flourishes in this one that no doubt Manny will touch upon. Also, my good friend Austin Kelly, who is essentially a Tashlin-holic, he will come on board and give his few thoughts as well. So a few bits of trivia here. So this is the last Porky pick for Frank Tashlin during this first directing period. So this is the second time he's at Warner's. He was briefly an animator, but he left not too long after he pretty much started. He came back, became a director, taking over Jack King's unit, and he leaves again and goes to work for Disney for a little bit. Then after Disney, he goes to Screen Gems, then after Screen Gems, he comes back to Warner's. So this is definitely the last Porky short he does, and it's the last black and white short he does during this directing period. And in case you were wondering, I mean, this should be a parody, but for some it's not, so I'll mention it anyway. The title is a play on the expression, "Holy smoke," like it's an exclamation. Holy smoke, such and such has happened. Now, what's interesting about this short coming out in 1938 is that there were two other shorts in 1938 which has very similar ideas. So you've got the 1938 Happy Harmonies cartoon Pipe Dreams, which involves good characters. They're tempted to smoke tobacco, essentially. So it's like, no, smoking tobacco is bad, and so on, which, again, I'm going to point out something in just a moment regarding that. You've also got from Disney, Donald's Better Self. While that one's not exactly tobacco focused, there is definitely a gag in there where the evil Donald, the one that tempts Donald from going to school, again, for some reason he's a child in that one, much like Porky is here, there's a whole thing about, hey, smoke this, you'll be a man, and Donald struggles, the evil Donald laughs at him, and so on. So it's interesting, you got three cartoons in 1938 which have very similar ideas. I'm just chalking that up to coincidence, because that's what sometimes happens, you know. Although the animation crew on the West Coast were a tight-knit bunch anyway, so maybe someone mentioned story ideas and somebody borrowed it, but all in all though, it's still a pretty good idea. But what's really interesting is how this is an anti-smoking short. You have to keep in mind, in 1938, doctors literally prescribed cigarettes. I even saw one where a dentist prescribed a cigarette. The dangers of smoking really weren't well known. In fact, soldiers going to war were even given cigarettes. It was just seen as a normal thing. Just like drinking beer is seen as a normal thing. I dare say it's on the level where if you look at all the coffee ads you see and everyone drinking coffee, think of that, but with cigarettes. That's essentially how widespread it was. And later on, of course, once we started knowing the dangers of smoking and secondhand smoke and so on, that's when you start getting all the anti-smoking stuff. And we're in a period of time where people in the theaters would have smoked. People animated on this actual short would have been smoking while they were drawing. They probably had a cigarette in one hand or a pipe in one hand and a pencil in the other. Heck, Frank Tashlin smoked. So it's really interesting that he actually did this. I mean, it's just possible that the person that wrote the story, Gio Manuel, maybe he didn't like smoking? I don't know. I'm really fascinated as to how this anti-smoking short came about in an era where smoking was just so prevalent. And apparently the writer as well, this was the last time that he was credited on a Warner short. He ended up going to Miami to the new Fleischer studios that opened up there around this time. And he had other figures like Pinto Colby. A lot of figures ended up going over there at that time. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through this short from start to finish and go through some of the other observations because, yep, this is in a shop. It's a cigarette shop. So what does that mean? Product identification. That's right. We're going to be going through what some of those parodies are. And unfortunately, some of them appear to be pretty obscure. so I have been unable to get every single one. So if there are any references I missed or I'm not sure of, definitely correct me below, because it not only helps me, but it helps everyone, so we all get the right answer. So we open up and we hear a church song, The Little Old Church in the Valley, which I'm sure Manny will get into once he discusses the music of this short. It's interesting that it just looks all serious for a moment, but then you've got the priest, he just rings the bell in a rather unusual way. He just rings the bell as though he's playing some sort of a carnival game, which is very bizarre, but anyway, it's nicely timed at the very least. And then we see Porky's mother, voiced by Ted Pierce. Honestly, it just seems like he was probably voicing Nicotine at the time, and they just needed someone to voice her lines, and they just got him to do it just cause. I mean, otherwise it's a pretty insane idea. So we pan up and we see Porky, who, again, is a child. So they really didn't care about continuity, did they? And that's not a knock against this cartoon or anything else. It's just interesting how inconsistent the character Porky really was. He can just be whoever the director wanted him to be. And in this case, it makes sense for him to be a school child again, going to Sunday school. So Porky slides down, and just before he hits the end of the banister, he just stops and ends up hopping off. So we've got some good timing there. And the mother just gives the nickel to Porky, saying the nickel is not for candy, but it goes into the collection plate, basically. It's like, okay, sure. And she even warns him, don't talk to strange people, make sure you look before crossing the street and that sort of thing. So, she's being a good mother, of course.
And the nickel what I give you is not for the candy. No, no. But in the plate goes it.
Okay, Mom.
Nix on talking to strange people and crossing the street without getting bumped. Or nix on the mud playing in.
Although it does beg the question, why isn't she going to church as well? I don't know. Was she banned from church and she wants to save her son or something? It's kind of weird, but yeah, oh well. That's just overthinking it, of course. I mean, then we wouldn't really have a story otherwise. So Porky walks on ahead, he's muttering to himself, reminding him what his mother has said to him, as we end up seeing our bully character, who's unnamed here, is just this tough-looking dog. And we know that he's a rough and tough fella because he's smoking a cigar. But the effects animator here would have been really working overtime with all the smoke effects in this one. So Porky sees the bully smoking and he's looking on with curiosity, but he ends up getting his eyes poked out with the smoke, and Porky ends up engaging with the bully. And we got some really interesting staging here, especially with that one shot of Porky from down up, which is a very interesting drawing there, including the duotone coloring. It's so brief, and yet it's an interesting choice of shot. But Porky seems to already have the idea of, don't you know what happens to little boys who smoke? And the bully seems to take offense at that. And we see that the bully shows how tough he is, not from how strong he is or anything like that. No, it's about how tough he is smoking. And there's definitely some interesting musical elements in this scene, which I'll leave that to Manny to discuss. But it's definitely timed really well, and the music choice is really effective here. But it also sets up the gag that we're going to see in a moment with Porky. So after the bully shows off his smoking skills, he says to Porky, how do you like that, puny puss? And Porky says, I ain't no puny puss, and they end up just arguing. With the later Looney Tunes, you would think that there would be some sort of a reverse psychology sort of thing here with the whole I ain't, I am, I ain't, I am. And one would end up swapping and the other one would end up swapping as well. But no, it just goes on and on and on. So the intensity builds up. Then Porky says, hey, I'm going to bet you a nickel that he's going to prove that he's not a wuss. But this scene here is incredible. You got this bully, he turns from being a tough guy, and then he just ends up just changing his demeanor entirely. Just his expressions here kill me. And so it's a deal. The bully ends up getting a nickel, and Porky ends up giving the cigar a go, doing the exact same thing that the bully did before, but failing. But we can see that he clearly is keeping on trying, and we just see smoke everywhere. And we get that warped effect, which would have been achieved from the animated sequence being done normally, but then just warping the cells as it was actually photographed. So it's a neat effect, and we end up at a smoke shop. Though I'm looking at the shop here, it says Gone Tora, be back tomorrow, maybe. Proprietor. Okay, sure. It's a nice looking shop. It's still got that modern style that Frank Tashlin was going for during this period of time. And Porky ends up inside the store, and we see our other character, Nick O'Teen, who ends up shrinking Porky. And this is not the first nor the last time you'll ever watch a short where you got a character that ends up being shrunken down and ends up dealing with larger characters. So you'll have, say, Mickey Mouse being shrunk and he's in a garden full of bugs, and even Buddy did a short like that. So it's not uncommon for this sort of thing to happen. But what a weird design this Nick O'Teen fella is just this massive belly, but then a really skinny head with a long nose. It's such a bizarre design. And again, it's laid out in an interesting way. So we can see all these different shots, including a top-down shot of Nicotine, where Porky's head is in a rather weird position. And we see that, yeah, his name is Nic-O-Teen. And I shouldn't have to explain that that's a play on the actual drug nicotine, but there you are, just for the few that aren't aware. 1313 Tobacco Road, obvious joke, but I'll allow it, okay? So now is when I'm going to show what some of these products are, because a lot of these are parodies. Some appear to be not direct parodies, but just a general parody. So again, if I'm wrong on any of this, or if you think you know a better answer to some of these, rather than being a generic thing that I think it is, let me know in the comment. Now the first one, you can see Genuine Bossy Flakes. I couldn't find anything, so that one I'm going to put a bit of a question mark on. Next one looks like it's a parody of the old Virginia Cheroots tobacco. Now Piccadilly Sprouts, I believe that's another name for Brussels sprouts. I mean, I've always known them as Brussels sprouts, so in any case, let me know if I'm wrong on that. What I am 99% confident on, though, Camel cigarettes, pretty common, except here it's spelled with a K, and they actually are Camel cigarettes. And you'll notice a lot of these tobacco products are made in Burbank, which is where this short would have been animated in. So the Really Cigarettes is a parody of Rayleigh Cigarettes, which has like a real-looking fella in the front. That one's a really interesting pun on the name there. The one I couldn't find was Range Rough Stuff Tobacco. There are a few tobacco products with bulldogs in the front, and yet nothing stands out as a direct parody of this one. So if you can find it, definitely let me know. Oh, and you can see next to it, just for those who aren't aware, a stick of chewing tobacco, which you might see in a few shorts where they'll have like a black bar above a star on it. That's what they would typically look like. Next to the rough stuff, you see Valor Smoking Tobacco. That's a parody of Velvet Smoking Tobacco. But as for this Nicotine character, I do like the way that Piers delivers his line. He goes, "Who am I? Why, I thought all smokers knew me." And he says, "So you like to smoke, eh? Well, you come to the right place. Then you can get all the smoking you can handle."
So you like to smoke, eh? Well, you came to the right place, Sonny. And you get all the smoking you can handle!
It's kind of similar to the Pigs short that Friz Freleng directed, where a hungry pig just wants to eat, and so this mad scientist ends up just feeding him just about everything. And he ends up being tied up with pipe cleaners. When I was growing up, pipe cleaners were just known as those funny little sticks that you would just bend and make things with them in art class. So it's interesting how things change in that way. Then we see Nicotine playing an organ of some kind for Clear Havana cigars, and you even see on the side, Full Dress. Now, I believe that's a play on the Clear Havana cigar, and they had a gentleman by the name of Robert Burns actually promoting it, and he would be in a tuxedo, so that looks like that's what that's a parody of. And we see the matches lighting themselves up, which, yeah, this would have been likely cut for TV for reasons that should be pretty apparent. Although, as I understand it, this was also colorized, and when it was colorized, they weren't colorized as blackface, so this scene was actually allowed, so kind of interesting that that's happened. Couldn't really find anything on Tijuana, haha, so Tijuana Twist there. I know that there is Twist tobacco that you can get, which is an interesting variation on tobacco. I swear, Google is going to now just promote tobacco products to me all the time, aren't they? After all the research I've done on tobacco, you know, I'm going to end up being in flavor country each and every day. But no, I couldn't find anything specific on that, like a red hot tobacco. I mean, it's clear it's a play on Tijuana, so something Mexican related. So if you know what that's relating to, definitely let me know. Similar to Barclay Square, I know decades after this in the 1960s, Barclays was a UK cigarette brand, but they weren't around then, so yeah, you'll have to help me with that one, guys. So if you know what that's referencing, definitely let me know. So we see a lighter and we see Plenty brand cigarettes with a horse in the background there, and I believe that that's a parody of 20 grand cigarettes. So Plenty brand, 20 grand, and they both have a horse on the cover. I'm 99% sure that that's what it's parodying there. So the lighter lights up the cigarette, and got this really cruel contraption here that Nicotine is using to make Porky smoke. Again, if you watch this short, it's so bizarre that they did this in an era where smoking was considered healthy by a lot of people. So we see London pipes and British pipes, so various different types of pipes that were available. I honestly don't know what the difference in pipe shape would actually do when it comes to tobacco smoking, so if any of you happen to smoke pipes, tobacco pipes, please, let me know. if there is a difference between smoking the different types of pipes. So the song continues along and we see Genuine Bossy Flakes. And I believe that's a parody of Genuine Durham smoking tobacco because it's got a cow on the front. It's even got that bullion that it would come with as well on the side. With Genuine Durham, they would have that little tag that would be at the end of the rope just to show it's a sign that it's a quality product. And there it says, none genuine hoot bull on package. Well, it's a play on what the tag actually said, which was none genuine without the bull on each package. So, yeah. So they're clearly playing on that. And you can see Tubby Millar there as well as part of Tub Corporation for some reason. Again, in Burbank, Tubby Millar was a writer at the studio at the time. And in a very brief moment, you see Fat Emma, Turkish cigarettes. Okay, all right. She's Emma and she's fat, I guess. But that's a play on Fatima cigarettes. And I'm not sure if they're still around. Next to it, Piccadilly cigarettes, they were around as well at the time. Although it's funny on the bottom of that package that says for His Royal Highness, which I know nowadays got King Charles, but a lot of people watching this short might have watched it when it was Queen Elizabeth, but when this short was made in 1938, it was King George VI, who apparently was of Burbank and San Fernando. So how about that, right? I didn't know that part about royal history, but anyway. Night Owl brand, that's a parody of White Owl brand cigars. It's just interesting to just get an owl and it's just perched on a cigar. It just sounds like someone just created that one day and just said, yep, I'm done. Corn pipe, another type of pipe that's literally made from corn husks, something that you'll prominently see in a lot of rural America. Not sure how prevalent corn pipes actually are these days. I'm definitely curious if any of you who live in the more rural parts of the USA, are corn pipes still around? Yeah, you got chewing tobacco, of course. Yeah, got wonderful mouth animation on each and every box, because of course you do. There goes Pittsburgh Stooges, and that's a parody of Stooges. I'm not sure of the Infernal Revenue, what that's a parody of. I looked absolutely everywhere for that, trying to figure that one out, so let me know if it's referring to something. But yeah, a Stoogie, that's another name for a cigar, and of course here it's Stooges. The Three Stooges. And they look really good here. I gotta say, I love the way that they parodied in this one shot. And they're doing the trademark eye poke, because why not? By this time, they were hugely popular in short subjects from Columbia, and had been for roughly 3 or so years by now, although they had a career before they were really famous Columbia shorts. I'm not sure exactly on the Crooner brand, but there is a cut of tobacco that was supposedly done in a way that Bing Crosby had specifically made as his own private blend, because he would always have a pipe, and yeah, that's what he would actually smoke. And there is like the Crooner, Cornell and Deal brand of Crooner tobacco, but from what I see, it's just a brand that has just tried to recreate Bing Crosby's own private blend. And speaking of Bing, you see him on the left, Bing Crosby. And next to him, we see Rudy Valley as well. We're not sure who does the crooning voices here, but they do a pretty good job here. So we continue along. We've got these wonderful machines, and I'm noticing the background just disappears for a while, emphasizing all the torture that's been done to Porky, being made to just smoke and smoke and smoke. And then it's a really disgusting gag, though, because chewing tobacco, you're supposed to spit it back out. You're supposed to chew it, get the sensation of all the nicotine, and then you spit it in a spittoon, but he ends up actually swallowing it. Ugh. Okay, sure. We see Pipe Cleaner actually just walking around. Again, this is the sort of thing we would do in art class. Just make little figures that you might display or whatever. So it's interesting that they were doing it even back then. But no, the original purpose of pipe cleaners was to clean pipes. And we see Prince Albert smoking tobacco, which is a parody of the Prince Albert pipe tobacco. But I love the animation of this pipe cleaner character, which it doesn't really lead to much, at least originally. So you're thinking, why on earth are we following this character? And he also passes by Smoke Ducks mixture, and it goes a mellow blend and looks like fake Chinese writing there. But that appears to be a parody of Duke's mixture, smoking tobacco. So I don't know if the whole thing about Ducks mixture is just playing up, oh, the Chinese eat ducks, so let's just do that in this gag. I don't know. But he ends up doing another blackface gag and becomes Cab Calloway for a very brief moment. But the next shot of Nicotine, I just love how three-dimensional the character looks in that one brief shot there, and he just ends up playing two pipes like it's a drum. As we see, well, as you would expect, Porky's all tied up. You got the Native American pipes now circling around. I mean, I wonder how many of those were sold in cigar shops back in the day. But they're walking around, and we then see more Havana cigars, which is considered to be perhaps the most famous type of cigars one can get. And it was especially hard for those in the US to get those because of the trade embargo with Cuba. Although at the time you could get them, because this was in a time before Castro and the Cold War, but they were definitely deemed to be some of the best cigars in the world. And we keep going with all of the dance sequences, and a lot of this reminds me of a Busby Berkeley musical number. Just beautifully timed, and we see one of the cigarettes using a snuff container, and snuff, it would be a little bit of tobacco you'd put up your nose, and yeah. If you've seen the Scarlet Pumpernickel, you'd know what snuff is, because Daffy literally takes it. But he's using the snuff container as a drum kit. See a beautiful miniature dance number with cigarettes forming into the shape of no smoking, as we then go to a montage, presumably to save on time and money, as we see Porky running away from nicotine and just growing back to his original size. And the ending is rather quick, actually, so he's racing back to the church, still with a cigar, by the way, as the collection plate is going around. On his way up, though, I do like the crudely drawn background characters there. I mean, it's only for a split second, but it's just so creepy looking. So he's racing up, realizes, whoops, I've still got the cigar and not the nickel. So he races back, swaps the nickel for the cigar, which, I mean, the bully hasn't even spent it yet. I guess he just wants to be like someone from Scarface, doing the whole coin flip that seems to always happen in a lot of these animated shorts. So Porky races back, puts his money in the collection plate, and now he's a good boy, and we finish right there. So I've been prattling on long enough, so my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, he's going to go through the musical elements of this short. As you've already seen, there's quite a bit of it. So take it away, Manny.
Hi everyone, this is Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time with music trivia for you today. Bum! For the 1938 Looney Tune cartoon, Holy Smoke, directed by my fellow Jersey boy Frank Tashlin, with musical direction by Carl W. Stalling. So, as I've done before, I usually stick to doing merry melodies for Manny's Music Time, but I decided to jump on for this particular Looney Tune because it happens to be one of my favorite cartoons that was directed by Frank Tashlin, and it's been a while since I've heard it, and this one is very music heavy for many different reasons, especially the main featured song, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And yeah, it was so good to revisit this cartoon. I could see why I enjoyed so much. It's kind of creepy, but I love the animation. I love the music in it. It's definitely one of Tashlin's best. So thank you, Anthony, for letting me talk about this one. Sorry it took so long to record. I've been a busy boy. Maybe I was smoking too much. You know, I'm in flavor country. There's my Simpsons reference. See, I snuck it in there. No, actually, no, I don't smoke. I don't drink and I don't smoke. I mean, very, very, very rarely do I have a small little, I don't know, rum and coke. But for all intents and purposes, I just don't care for alcohol or smoking. And as a singer, I try to take care of my voice as best as possible. I try to stay hydrated. I try to eat healthy. I'm still working on that one. But alcohol and smoking definitely do a lot of damage to the vocal folds, to the lungs, and all that other stuff. So that's why personally I stay away from it. And plus, I just don't like the taste of alcohol. And smoking is nasty. Ugh. So let's talk about this cartoon. See, now I'm just thinking about, of course, I'm in flavor country. One of the episodes of The Simpsons where Patty and Selma bail Homer out. Now's the appropriate time to put a picture of me like Homer with all the cigarettes in his mouth. That's from a different episode, but God, the picture cracks me up every time I hear it, or not hear it, see it. See, maybe I am smoking because I'm getting my hearing and my seeing completely confused. So let's jump into it. So the cartoon obviously starts off with the merry-go-round broke down, the Looney Tunes theme song. That was co-written by Cliff Friend and Dave Franklin and first used in the 1937 Looney Tune Rover's Rival as the Looney Tunes theme song. But that song does play a bit of a prominent role outside of the opening credits, or I should say the Looney Tunes theme song. And I'll get back to that in a little bit, so put a pin in that one. So the first song that you hear after the merry-go-round broke down is Let That Be a Lesson to You. That music was written by Johnny Mercer, who wrote the words, and Richard Whiting, who wrote the music. And the song itself comes from the 1937 Warner Brothers feature, Hollywood Hotel, that features different celebrities like Dick Powell, Johnny Davis, Luella Parsons, Hugh Herbert, Benny Goodman, and others. And the reason why I mention those particular names is because those people were caricatured in various Warner Brothers cartoons. For example, Hugh Herbert, the guy that Daffy Duck's laugh was based off of. I mean, Tashlin himself referenced Hugh Herbert in one of his trilogy of cartoons, the Books Come to Life series. I think it's Speaking of the Weather from 1937 that has a caricature of Hugh Herbert. Luella Parsons was parodied in The Woods Are Full of Cuckoos from 1937 as well. Dick Powell has been parodying a lot of Warner shorts. Benny Goodman as well. And Johnny Davis was the guy who sings in the feature Hollywood Hotel, but he was also the voice of the cat in the 1938 cartoon Catnip College, directed by Cal Howard and Cal Dalton. And in that cartoon, it features this song, Let That Be a Lesson to You. Oh, Columbus was the discoverer of America. Even though we now know that's patently false, but, you know, that's a history lesson that many people still don't know to this day. So anywho, you hear Let That Be a Lesson to You. You see the nice shot of all the different pipes and cigarettes over the opening titles. And yeah, I do like this song. I was actually listening to the rendition of it from the film before I recorded this commentary, and it's really nice, really cool stuff. I gotta watch the film one day. So the cartoon starts, you see a shot of a church, and you see the pastor, the reverend, whatever you want to call it, whatever denomination Porky and his mom happen to be. I'm assuming they're a Protestant church because Porky's mother sounds like she's German. She has a German accent when she speaks, so I'm assuming she's a Protestant. But yeah, you got the reverend banging on the bell, and it kind of looks like when you go to like a carnival and you hit the thing, the string thing. It makes me think of Popeye whenever he hits it and just boom, hits the bell. The song you hear is called Little Old Church in the Valley. The words were written by Egbert Van Alstyne and Gene Arnold, and the music was written by Gus Kahn, and the song was first published in 1931. I never get tired of Egbert's name, Egbert. He's written other songs in Warner Brothers cartoons. I can't think of any at the moment, but his name has definitely popped up in others' Manny music times. And speaking of Porky's mom with the German accent, she's voiced by Ted Pierce, who also does the voice of the villain of this cartoon, Nick O'Teen.
Porky Pig! Hurry it up, please. For Sunday school, you will be late here.
Okay, Mom.
And obviously Mel Blanc is doing the voice of Porky Pig here, and he does the voice of the bully dog later in the cartoon. But it's cool to hear other voice actors, but especially some of the other staff, Termite Terrace and Ted Pierce, besides being a writer, did do a lot of voices in other cartoons for Tashlin, for Freeling, for Jones, so on and so forth. And he was pretty versatile when it comes to his voice acting, so I got to give him credit for that. So you hear that song, and then when Porky is being spoken to his Mutter, you know, again, going with the whole German theme, you hear the song Daddy's Boy, which was written by Grady Watts, a jazz trumpet player. I looked him up a little bit.
Go sit.
Okay, Mom.
Nix on talking to strange people when crossing the street without getting bumped. Or nix on the mud playing in.
And the song is from 1938. And that song kind of becomes like a little bit of Porky's theme song. Because later on in the cartoon, when he confronts the bully for the first time, when he's saying, you know, little boys shouldn't smoke, you hear a little bit of Daddy's Boy coming back again.
Don't you know what happens to little punk boys who smoke?
Now, according to the cue sheet, it says that Columbia Gem of the Ocean is featured, but I didn't hear it. I listened to it a few times, and I did not hear the melody of that song. But it's a patriotic song. I'm thinking of the ending of another Porky cartoon, Old Glory, which features that song at the end, but I didn't hear it here, so I'm going to say it's not there. There's probably an error in the cue sheet. You do hear a little snippet. So when you first see the bully dog, you hear a little bit of bum, 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 which is traditionally the melody of a little phrase, you're a horse's ass. ooh, he said a bad word. For the Aussie audience and Anthony, the arse. And I guess the British folks as well, and the Irish, I don't know. Ah, you're a horse's arse. That's a terrible accent. I don't know what accent that was. But you hear that right when the smoke horseshoes hit the fire hydrant. That one's not listed in the cue sheet, but I heard that melody and I knew exactly what it was. In the beginning, when you first see the bully pup, you hear the music being played on a muted trumpet. So as a kid, I used to always hear, maybe not that particular muted sound, but just anytime I would hear like a muted trumpet, like more of like a very thin sound. I wish I could think of an example from a Disney film, but I always used to say that sounds like Disney stuff. But yeah, whenever I heard a muted trumpet, that's what I would think. But that growly, and it's being played on a trumpet with a mute. Oh, sounds so good. And then what's kind of neat is at the end of the cartoon, when Porky gets his revenge and takes his nickel back from the bully dog, you hear the melody of Mysterious Mose being played on a muted trumpet. So again, it's like tying together the lesson that Porky learned, but that muted trumpet kind of represents the bully dog himself. So you have Porky and the bully dog confronting each other, and then when Porky mentions that he has a really sweet nickel on him, and I have to go to my trusty inflation calculator, because here in the States, one of the many stories going on in this country, because we just can't go a day without having something pop up in the news, in particular nonsense and insanity. But yeah, we just recently got rid of the penny. The final penny was minted not that long ago, and it's going to be interesting to see how things will be calculated without the penny. But the nickel's still around. This cartoon came out in 1938. A nickel, and if you do it in 2025 money, a nickel would be $1.15, which really still can't buy you much here in the current economic situation that we're in. Even dollar stores now it's like $1.25, $1.50, $2 store. I could keep going, but I don't want to make this commentary even longer than it is, and I already said one bad word. I don't want to say any more. So, Sweet Music, that's the song that you hear when Porky mentions the nickel, and the bully becomes very friendly and tries to sweet talk Porky into getting it. I really like Mel Blanc's delivery of, really? Just like hearing him go from that tough bully. Maybe that was my father back in the day when he was a kid, that he talked like that. Maybe he had a cigar in his mouth. Who knows? I was not alive in the 1950s or 60s to see him. But yeah, the song you hear is Sweet Music, how appropriate, written by a famous team of Harry Warren, who wrote the music, and Al Dubin, who wrote the words.
You are. I ain't. 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 I ain't. I ain't. I ain't. You are. You are. You are. I ain't. I ain't. I ain't. But bet you a nickel.
A nickel? 1/20th of a dollar? 5 cents? 1/2 a dime? Did you say a nickel? Really? Did you?
Nickel.
And the song Sweet Music comes from the 1935 film of the same name. Now, I mentioned before that obviously since this is a Looney Tune, it starts with the merry-go-round broke down. Now, you hear the merry-go-round broke down come back in probably my favorite scene in this cartoon, where you hear the merry-go-round broke down played twice, once for the bully dog and once for Porky when they're doing their smoke rings and their tricks. And something that I really, I was going to wait to the end, but I might as well bring it up now. This cartoon, it kills me how beautiful the orchestration is in this particular cartoon. And I also want to shout out not only the amazing research that Daniel Goldmark has done in compiling all the cue sheets for these cartoons, which obviously a lot of what I do is based off of his work, so thank you, Daniel. And if you buy either the Golden Collection or the Platinum Collection, there is a audio commentary by Daniel Goldmark talking about this cartoon, and he brings up the orchestration as well. So I've said it before in other commentaries. So arranging is you take a song and you pretty much rewrite it in a different style. Like, for example, a piece of music that was originally written for an orchestra, you rewrite it for the piano, you rewrite it for a group of singers. That's what, arranging is. Or you have a song that was written originally like a jazz piece, you rewrite it in a style of like a salsa song, or you rewrite it in the style of a waltz, whatever it may be. So that's what arranging is. And Carl Stalling, as we all know, did the arrangement. He chose the cues, he blended them together, and he wrote his own incidental, unique music to connect all these cues together. and Milt Franklin, who became his successor in the 50s. Stalling and Franklin are pretty much a team since their early days back in 1936. And this cartoon just really shows how well both Stalling arranged, but also just how well Milt Franklin did the orchestrations, because he was the one saying, all right, in this part, I want the trumpet to play this part. I want the saxophone to do this one. And this cartoon just really, really is a good example of just the gift of orchestration to punctuate the drama, the comedy. So when you hear the Merry-Go-Round Broke Down being played, first off, Carl Stalling decided to arrange the Merry-Go-Round Broke Down in a minor key. So the song itself is in a major key. So major, quote unquote, usually sounds happy. Major key. But what Carl Stalling did was for the Bully Puppy, he decided to arrange it in a minor key. Anthony's probably going to put a clip from the cartoon to make more sense. But it's in a minor key. It sounds serious. It sounds sad, or whatever it may be. So minor keys usually sound sad, scary, suspenseful, dramatic, and major keys usually sound happy. And he did that. And at the same time, what Milt Franklin decided to do was have the melody of the Merry-Go-Round Broke Down being played. It sounds like a baritone saxophone or a bass sax. I used to play the baritone saxophone, so when I heard that, of course, I was like, oh, my old instrument. And just the fact that it's being played in minor and is being played by a low woodwind instrument, the baritone sax, and Milt Franklin was a specialist in woodwind instruments. It's just, oh, I just love that part right there, especially the little stingers when a bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 those little chords near the end when the bully dog is getting the ash off the cigar and he does a trick and he pops back in his mouth. So when it's Porky's turn, that's when you hear the Merry-Go-Round Broke Down played in its original major key, but Carl Stalling and Milt Franklin go from having one of the lowest woodwind instruments play to the flute or the piccolo at the complete opposite high end to make it sound kind of childish and ridiculous and silly, because obviously, as we all know, Porky fails in his attempts to do smoke tricks. He has bird made of smoke drop an egg on him. He gets the arrow getting the tuchus. And of course, at the end where he tries to do the cigar trick and the ash end of the cigar goes right into his mouth and Porky starts coughing. And that particular cough effect, that always makes me laugh. It always makes me think of Porky and T-Biscuit, where T-Biscuit does that particular cough. But yeah, there's other instances in this cartoon. Just the orchestration and the arrangement. Like, of course, the whole Mysterious Mose scene, how Mysterious Mose goes from the beginning of the melody being played on like a pipe organ, and then you hear it later performed in the style of like Latin music from Cuba, from the Caribbean, even though the cigars have sombreros, which is Mexico. Two different places in the world, two different styles of music. That's chalking that up to just they didn't know any better. Me being Hispanic, my relatives are from Cuba, and that sounds like Cuban music. It does not sound like Mexican music to me. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this particular cartoon, the song Mysterious Mose, which was written by Walter Doyle. And the song is from 1930, and it was originally used, or one of the first uses of it, was from another animated short, but not by Warner Brothers. It was from the Fleischer Studios. It was a talk cartoon that was one of the earliest appearances of Betty Boop, which featured the song, and the cartoon has the same name, Mysterious Mose. And what Daniel Goldmark says in his commentary, when you see the lead up to Nicotine, you hear the bum, 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 bum. That stereotypical villain, evil person music, which I don't know the origin of. But Mysterious Mose uses that little theme in the melody of the song. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. And it goes right into the proper song itself. Now, Mysterious Mose, again, you hear different versions of it, and you hear a little bit being played when Nicotine is sweet-talking Porky, leading him up, says, hey, you know, you want to smoke, kid? And then he throws him into pretty much the torture devices that he subjects Porky to.
So you like to smoke, eh? Well, you came to the right place, Sonny. And you get all the all the smoking you can handle.
Again, this is kind of a creepy cartoon for a kid to see, just seeing Porky being all innocent and, yeah, just being strapped up and pumped with smoke. Yeah, it's a lot. And, of course, he teaches him a valuable lesson, but it's kind of creepy the way he does it. But, yeah, you hear when Nicotine jumps over to, like, the matchbox, but he starts using the actual matches, like the keys on an organ, and the smoking pipes are like the pipes of a pipe organ. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then you see the matches strike, and they turn into an unfortunate blackface depiction of a singing group, which is most likely an homage to the Mills Brothers, and they sing the melody of Mysterious Mose. You hear different instruments play, like you hear a little bit of the melody being played on xylophone.
You shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't smoke. It's no fun to smoke just one. Take 6 at a stroke. Fume and buzz and sizzle.
Children should not smoke, rather.
Then you have another instance where you have the pipe cleaner walking around. He dips his head inside the pipe. Again, another blackface stereotype. But this time it's of the very famous singer Cab Calloway. And you hear a very brief imitation, "Little boy shouldn't smoke." Whoever that singer was sounded really good.
Little boy shouldn't smoke.
And speaking of singers, you also have Two Cigars come out, and they're caricatures of crooners Bing Crosby and Rudy Valley. And then again, the melody morphs into like a pipe organ, then it morphs into a rendition similar to the Mills Brothers, and then you see another scene, again, stereotypical depiction of pipes that look like Native American pipes. You're like doing a war dance around Porky, and the music sounds quote unquote like Native American music. And then it switches over to the Cuban cigars, even though they're wearing Mexican sombreros, and it switches into like a Latin groove. Dun, 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 you know, you have that clave rhythm, gung, 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 or gung, 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 gung. The cinquillo rhythm that you hear a lot in Latin music from like Cuba, from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, stuff like that. And then it switches into like a military marching band with all the cigarettes marching in formation and all that, and it creates a no smoking sign. And it's kind of neat seeing a cartoon that came out in the 1930s being so anti-smoking, because I was talking about this with somebody recently. I was born in the late 80s. I grew up in the 90s, and people were still smoking. Like, I remember people smoking in restaurants and bowling alleys. You go to, like, different places, like a restaurant or bowling alley, like I said, and they had those dispensers where you would pay a few dollars, I don't know, you put your change in, and you would pull the machine, and it vended you a pack of cigarettes, like Joe Camel and Newports and whatever. And by the time I guess I got to late elementary, middle school, so this is like the late 90s, early 2000s, that's when it all completely changed. Smoking was banned pretty much everywhere. You couldn't smoke in restaurants, you couldn't smoke in bowling alleys, you couldn't smoke in hotels. Like, all that was gone. And thank goodness, because I hate the smell of cigarettes and obviously the dangers of secondhand smoke and smoking in general. I went to Puerto Rico June of 2024, and on one of my first nights there, I was on vacation with some friends, and I saw one of those old vending machines from when I was a kid. I was like, holy cow, I have not seen this thing in like 20-something years. And, you know, you bring it up to a kid now, and they would be like, what is that? It's a relic of the past that I was old enough to remember, but yeah, I wasn't planning on smoking, and I still don't smoke, so I'm proud of that. But yeah, this whole scene with Mysterious Mose, it's so much to feature. It's just the way that it was arranged, jumping between different styles of music and different instrumentation and all that other stuff. It's a feast for the ears. So Porky has that weird, insane trip, that torture, and all that other stuff. And as Daniel Goldmark and others have pointed out, this definitely gives me vibes of Pigs is Pigs, the 1937 Merry Melody by Fritz Freeling, where instead of being subjected to torture by smoke, the main character, who's not Porky, it's another character called Piggy, he's subjected to the tortures of being overfed because he's trying to be taught a lesson about not being a glutton, just like Porky's being taught, you know, not to smoke, because little boys shouldn't smoke. And I don't know, Little because I'm not a very tall guy, but I'm not little. I mean, I'm in my 30s, but yeah, don't smoke. Smoking's a drag, okay? And speaking of drag, but there's a few things. I remember seeing this cartoon on Cartoon Network a few times. I saw the redrawn colorized version, which was brutal to the eyes, and I think maybe once or twice on late night black and white back in the day. But there was a few scenes cut, like I mentioned, the scene with the Cab Calloway caricature and bits and pieces of the Mills Brothers matches. I think they also cut the Native American war dance scene as well. But one of the things that caught my ear the first time I heard it was when the Mills Brother matches says light a...
Light up fag.
They use a term which is slang for a cigarette. And remember, this cartoon was released in 1938. And I know that term is still used in England as a slang term for cigarettes, but it's in a cartoon. I'm not going to spell it. I'm not going to say it, but it is a homophobic slur. So definitely that's something that if you hear it now, somebody would be like, wait, what? What did they just say? So yeah, that's one of the things. As much as I love this cartoon, it's one of the things that it's a product of its time. There's caricatures and the use of that term, which most people would hear now, it's a homophobic slur. But in another positive sense, it was very forward-thinking and progressive for its time, because in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, it was so commonplace in movies and TV shows and cartoons to see people smoking. For example, my favorite film, Ghostbusters. A lot of the characters in the film smoke, and then by the time Ghostbusters 2 came out in 1989, the sequel, almost none of the characters smoked, minus there was like one scene where Ray was smoking a cigar near the end of the film. And that's something that I know that if I watch an older piece of media with someone who's, I'm a millennial, but like if I see something with a Gen Z or someone even younger, like Gen Alpha, whatever, they'll see smoking and they'll be like, wait, what? Like they're not used to that, but I'm old enough to remember, you know, a lot of adults smoking, but also just how commonplace it was in media. Times have changed. And yeah, again, for a cartoon from the late 30s, the fact that it was warning people the dangers of smoking, and that's something that's a long history. They got documentaries and all that about how the cigarette industry lied for years, hiding how dangerous smoking is. Of course, in animation, I mean, they have those commercials of the Flintstones back in the 60s peddling cigarettes. But I've rambled long enough about the dangers of smoking. Don't smoke. It sucks. And it makes your breath smell bad. And little boys should not be smoking cigarettes. Okay, that's a German, making fun of a German accent, but Mel Blanc, he does it better than I do. And the last cue that you hear is Daydreaming All Night Long, with music by Harry Warren and Johnny Mercer. He wrote the lyrics for this one. This comes from the 1938 film Gold Diggers in Paris, and this is when Porky wakes up from his hallucination, his nightmare, and you hear the melody being played. Oh, I always forget which one it is. It's some type of woodwind instrument. I want to say maybe like a bassoon or whatever, but any of my friends who are woodwind experts, I have a few friends like Mike. Hi, Mike. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Gary. You know, a few of my buddies I used to play in the band with, they're all woodwind specialists. They could help me out with this one. But you hear that being played very quietly, you know, on daydreaming, oh, da-da-da. And of course, my personal favorite rendition of this song is a cartoon that'll come out in the following year in Bars and Stripes Forever by Ben Hardaway and Cal Dalton, 1939. And that song is sung by the main prisoner of that cartoon. Brilliant performance by Mel Blanc. It's one of my favorites. And just before I'm done wrapping this up, I do want to say that that whole scene with Porky and the bully dog doing the tricks and using the melody of the merry-go-round broke down is one of my absolute favorite scenes in a Warner Brothers cartoon in terms of music. Like just the way that Stalling and Franklin arranged and orchestrated just cracks me up every time I hear it. Before I wrap this up, I just want to mention a few of the credits in terms of the vocals. So Daniel Goldmark, he mentioned a group. I think he said the Kingsmen. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I should have wrote it down. But I'm using the information from Keith Scott's book, Cartoon Voices. So obviously Mel Blanc does the voice of the bully dog, and he does the voice of Porky Pig, obviously. He does the British pipe, and he also does hick pipe. Little boys shouldn't be smoking tobacco. He does the voice of the bull as well as the German pipe. Ted Pierce, as I mentioned before, is Porky's mom, also with a German accent. And he does the voice of Nick O'Teen. And according to this book, it says the Sing Band, which is, like I said, the vocal group that does the stuff during the hallucination. And it looks like one of the members did the voice of the Cab Calloway caricature. For the crooners, so the Bing Crosby and the Rudy Valley, he has a question mark next to Cliff Nazzaro, who's done voices in Warner Brothers shorts. He's done either Egghead or Elmer, that whole debate, which I'm not going to be going into now. And then you have the Paul Taylor choristers, who was a church choir at the very beginning of the cartoon singing Little Old Church in the Valley. Whew! So yeah, that was a long one once again. I haven't recorded one of these in a while, so Anthony's probably regretting that, especially when he's about to edit it. But yeah, this cartoon is definitely one of my favorite Tashlin shorts. It's very interesting animation-wise, historically. A little bit of it on the creepy side. I mean, as I said a million times, one of my absolute favorite shorts, top 10, is The Case of the Stuttering Pig from Tashlin from the year prior. And I definitely put that as one of the creepiest Warner Brothers shorts. But this one is up there. It's creepy, but I still really enjoy it. It's always a blast. Porky's design and some of the shots, especially like when the bully says, "You want to fight?" and then you have that upshot of Porky and he's like looking at him. It's just like, whoa, like that's a very dramatic, weird angle on Porky, but that's what makes Tashlin shorts so interesting, not only in his first period at Warner's, which sadly is coming to a close soon. He's gonna have a few more cartoons, I think Cracked Ice and Little Pancho Vanilla and You're an Education, another music heavy one, which I'll be talking about. But yeah, it's a drag that he left Warner Brothers shortly after the release of this short. And then he comes back in the 40s and he has arguably his better period. I mean, these cartoons from the 30s, I love his 30s output, but his World War II stuff, incredible as well. And of course, I always got to mention he's one of our own. He's born in Weehawken, New Jersey, which is 30-ish minutes north of me, probably an hour if the stupid traffic, because it's very close to New York City, so you have to deal with the tunnels and the bridges, and it's a nightmare. And I used to work not far from Weehawken. I used to work in West New York, which is in New Jersey, and literally like West New York, Union City, and Weehawken, like you literally cross the street and you're in a different town. Like here, oh, I'm in Weehawken. All right, let me cross the street. You're back in West New York. Oh, let me walk a few block down. Oh, I'm in Union City, so they're very close by. So yeah, there's a little geography lesson for you. All right. So everyone, thanks for listening to Manny's Music Time. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for supporting Anthony's amazing work. It's always a blast to come on here. Please follow me on social media at The Tuning Tenor, TheToonyTenor for my updates on my life as a musician, as well as an enthusiast of many different things, of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Avatar, Legends universe, The Simpsons, Ghostbusters, and of course, my number one love, the original Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, which is why I'm talking to you guys right now. So yeah, enjoy, celebrate by, I don't know, not smoking, by not chewing tobacco, and maybe I'll take another trip to Flavor Town, or Flavor Country, but this time, I guess Flavor Country will just be going to, like, I don't know, a buffet or all-you-can-eat sushi spot or whatever. So thanks for listening, folks. See you soon. And that's all, folks. And remember, little boys and little girls shouldn't smoke tobacco. I think that accent was pretty good. I don't know. I'll keep practicing. Sorry, Mel Blanc. I'll maybe get to a little iota of your level one day when it comes to my voice acting career. I just got to work on my accents and all that. All right. Bye. I guess you could say I'm just going to be a puff of smoke, or I'm going to be up in smoke. I'm really trying for the cigarette puns right here, but I guess I'm just not lighting up the audience. There you go. Light My Fire, which is a great Doors song from 1967. Okay, here I go. I'm going to start rambling again. Focus. I mean, I don't know. I'm just being a wet match. I don't know. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Manny. And now my good friend Austin Kelly, he's going to now give his thoughts as well. So take it away, Austin.
Austin Kelly here, once again to talk about a Frank Tashlin classic. We're talking about Holy Smoke from 1938 with Porky Pig. And it's one of those cartoons that sort of doesn't get talked about anymore. I think it really was considered a classic for a long time, and it kind of disappeared. I think it's interesting the legacy this left behind back in the days of network censorship made it have this elevated importance in animation circles, because as I'm assuming most listeners know, Holy Smoke was victim of censorship basically anytime it aired on television, and so many different scenes were cut for so many different reasons, and some of those cuts make sense and some of them don't. And of course, that raises the question of, if you're going to cut so much, why air this one at all? Because the subject matter is, rather adult, and if you're going to cut out so much, there's so many better, frankly, Porky Pig cartoons that could fit a lot better in a time slot than this one, so it never really added up. But it is a successful cartoon at doing, I guess, what it tries to do, which is not tell a story or entertain as much as it does provide a lesson, which, as far as Warner Brothers cartoons go, is very rare. And how many Warner Brothers cartoons end without a gag, really, as the very last thing that happens, the very last scene? For that reason alone, Holy Smoke is one of the creepiest cartoons. I think it's got one of the weirdest endings ever in cartoon history, probably. But beyond that, the whole thing is creepy, and it doesn't really make sense. This nicotine guy, who's like this smoke manifestation, is kind of torturing Porky. I mean, to scare him out of smoking, but wouldn't you kind of want to encourage him to, just at a later date? Because this guy's kind of like the mascot of the smoke shop, right? But he's discouraging this guy from smoking, which, makes sense because of his age. But no one in the 30s, I feel like, ever discouraged anyone from smoking ever. Even kids sometimes, probably. So the whole thing's very bizarre. But he's a very concerning character because we don't know how he's just got these magical powers, not only to exist, but to just sort of zap his fingers at Porky and shrink him down. And of course, the last time we see him is him just chasing at Porky and like pinching at him, grabbing at him at the end of the film, which is, of course, terrifying because I think it's not really clear what he wants to do with him. He wants to like capture him to make him, give him more lung cancer. It's very concerning. Anyway, it's a beautiful film though, and it's very sort of confused, I feel like. And again, I think people made it out to be a bigger deal than it was because of how it had been sort of cut up over decades and decades. But now that it's out on home video in many iterations and looking beautiful, it'll probably fade into existence as one of the lesser Frank Tashlin films, which I guess only by comparison it is.
Thank you, Austin. So this one, yeah, it's a real curio of the time. As I mentioned before, it was in a very pro-smoking time period, and it was even directed by a smoker, and no doubt a lot of people on the crew were smokers, and yet it's an anti-smoking one. Go figure. How and why this came about, it's a real mystery, and we'll probably never really know, but it's still an interesting one. But the fact of the matter is, it's well animated, and it's quite fun, especially all the musical elements. Is it a go-to Tashlin short? Perhaps not. I do like some of his other Porkies better than this one, but it's okay for what it is, It's 8 out of 10. I quite enjoyed this one, especially when we get into the whole Busby Berkeley musical number bits towards the end. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
I will never smoke again.